The council chamber hung in the void of space like a massive jewel. Inside, representatives from 300 worlds sat in their assigned seats waiting for the next speaker. The air recyclers hummed softly, mixing atmospheres suitable for dozens of different species. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few required nothing but radiation. The chamber accommodated them all. Ambassador Kelrin stood at the central platform, his blue-green skin glistening under the artificial lights. He was Ilithari, a species that evolved in the deep oceans of Vareth Prime. His large eyes, designed to see in dark waters, struggled with the brightness of the chamber. His webbed hands trembled as he gripped the edges of the speaking podium. This was his third attempt to address the council. The first 2 times they had postponed his speech due to more urgent matters. Trade disputes between the Vryn and Tellurians, mining rights in the Hexari Nebula, a debate about standardized communication protocols that lasted 6 hours. Always something more important than his world's suffering, but today they finally let him speak. Kelrin activated the holographic display. Images appeared above his head, floating in the center of the chamber where all could see. The first image showed Vareth Prime as it once was. Blue oceans covered 90% of the planet's surface. Cities of coral and crystal rose from the shallow waters, beautiful and peaceful. The Ilithari numbered nearly 2 billion souls. They were poets, philosophers, artists. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of organized warfare. The next image made several council members look away. Vareth Prime now. The oceans ran dark with pollution. Massive industrial platforms floated where cities once stood. Smoke rose from burning settlements, and everywhere the angular black ships of the Croth Dominion. Kelrin's voice cracked as he spoke. Honorable council members, I come before you seeking help. 3 months ago, the Croth came to our world. They did not ask permission. They did not negotiate. They simply came and took what they wanted. He changed the image again. Ilithari people, his people in chains. Their skin had lost its healthy sheen, turning gray from malnutrition and despair. They worked in the mining platforms, extracting rare minerals from the ocean floor. The Croth overseers stood nearby, weapons ready for anyone who slowed or stumbled. They take our people as slaves. They poison our waters. They destroy our homes to reach the minerals beneath. Every day, thousands of my people die. We have no weapons to fight them. We have no ships to escape. We have only this plea, please help us. The chamber fell silent. Kelrin could see sympathy in many faces. The Tellurians, who resembled Earth's birds, clicked their beaks in distress. The Vryn, crystalline beings of living light, dimmed their glow in respect for his pain. Even the usually stoic Hexari shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but sympathy was not the same as action. The council's primary speaker, a Vryn named Crystalex, floated forward. Its voice chimed like bells. Ambassador Kelrin, your people's suffering grieves us all. The Croth Dominion's actions violate every principle of civilized behavior. However, the council must consider the broader implications of any action we take. Kelrin felt his heart sink. He knew what was coming. He had heard these same careful words before, in private meetings with individual council members. Crystalex continued. The Croth Dominion commands a fleet of over 400 warships. They control 17 systems. Any military action against them would result in massive casualties. Furthermore, Vareth Prime's location in the Outer Rim makes any sustained military operation logistically challenging. A Tellurian representative stood next. My government sympathizes with your plight, Ambassador. However, we cannot commit our fleet to a campaign so far from our own borders. Our resources are already stretched thin protecting our own trade routes. One by one, they stood and spoke. Each expressed sympathy. Each explained why they could not help. The Hexari collective worried about setting precedent. If they intervened for Vareth Prime, they would be obligated to intervene in every conflict. The Dravian Assembly claimed their ships were undergoing maintenance. The Corthan Federation suggested opening negotiations with the Croth instead of military action. Kelrin listened to it all, feeling hope drain from his body like water through a broken dam. He had prepared for this, but the reality was worse than he imagined. They were abandoning his people, not because they were evil or cruel, but because helping was inconvenient, because it would cost too much, risk too much, demand too much. He tried one more time. Please, I'm not asking you to wage a long war. I am asking for enough military support to drive the Croth from our world. We do not seek vengeance or territory. We only want to live in peace on our own planet. Is that so much to ask? Crystal X dimmed its light further, a sign of genuine regret among its kind. Ambassador, the Council will form a committee to study possible diplomatic solutions. We will send a strongly worded message to the Croth Dominion condemning their actions. We will impose economic sanctions, restricting trade with any who do business with them. These steps will take time, but they represent the best path forward. Kelrin wanted to scream. Committees and sanctions and strongly worded messages would take months, maybe years. His people did not have months. They had weeks at best. The Croth were strip mining Vareth Prime at an accelerating pace. Once they extracted all the valuable minerals, they would simply leave, abandoning the planet as a poisoned husk. His people would be sold to other slavers or simply killed as no longer useful, but screaming would not help. The Council had made its decision. They would do nothing that mattered. Kelrin bowed his head. Thank you for your time, honorable Council members. I will convey your concern to my people. He deactivated the holographic display and walked from the central platform. His feet, designed for swimming, slapped awkwardly against the hard floor. Behind him, the Council moved on to the next item of business. A trade dispute about agricultural exports. The representatives seemed relieved to discuss something less depressing. Kelrin made his way to his small quarters on the station. His assistant, a younger Ilithari named Veska, waited there. She looked at him hopefully. Did they agree to help? Kelrin shook his head. He could not speak. If he spoke, he would break down completely. Veska understood. She had expected this outcome even if she had hoped for better. What do we do now? Kelrin moved to the small window that looked out into space. Stars scattered across the darkness like sand on a beach. Somewhere out there, his world was dying. His people were suffering, and the galaxy's great council of civilized species had decided to do nothing. We go home, Kelrin said quietly. We die with our people. At least we tried. But even as he said it, a small part of him refused to give up entirely. The council would not help, but the galaxy was vast. Perhaps somewhere someone would listen. Someone would care. Someone would come. It was a foolish hope, he knew. But it was all he had left. He would send one more message before returning home. An unencrypted distress call broadcast to every corner of known space. Most would ignore it. Some would never receive it. But maybe, just maybe, someone would hear and answer. Ambassador Kelrin had no way of knowing that his message would change everything. That it would reach a young species from a brutal world. A species the galaxy called Deathworlders. A species that had a strange habit of helping those who could not help themselves. He had no way of knowing that humanity was listening. The bridge of the Valiant Heart was quiet except for the steady beep of sensors and the low hum of the engines. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, reviewing supply reports on his tablet. The ship was 3 days out from Earth's newest colony on Titan's Rest, a small mining outpost in the Kepler sector. It was routine patrol work, the kind that let crews get bored and restless. Morrison was a man in his mid-40s with gray starting to show in his dark hair. His face carried the lines of someone who had seen combat and carried those memories with him. Before joining the unified Earth fleet, he had served in the last of the Pacific conflicts back when humanity was still fighting itself instead of exploring the stars. Those days felt like another lifetime. Captain, I'm picking up something odd, said Lieutenant Chris Palmer from the communications station. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of enthusiasm that hadn't been worn down by years of routine patrols. Morrison looked up. Odd how? It's a distress signal, unencrypted, broadcasting on every frequency imaginable. Whoever sent it wanted everyone to hear it. Palmer frowned at his screen. Signal strength suggests it came from pretty far away. I'm running a translation now. The Universal Translator was one of humanity's first acquisitions after making contact with galactic civilization 5 years ago. It was not perfect, but it worked well enough for most purposes. A moment later, a voice filled the bridge. It sounded strange, like someone speaking underwater with clicks and whistles mixed in, but the words came through clearly enough. This is Ambassador Kelrin of the Ilithari people, broadcasting from Vareth Prime. We are under attack. The Croth Dominion has invaded our world. They enslave our people and poison our oceans. We asked the Galactic Council for help. They refused. We have no weapons, no defenses, no hope. This is our final plea. If anyone hears this message, please help us. We are dying. The bridge fell silent. Morrison felt something tighten in his chest. He had heard similar pleas before, back on Earth during the wars. Cities under siege, people trapped and desperate, calling for help that sometimes came too late or not at all. Commander Lisa Hayes stood from her station and walked to stand beside Morrison's chair. She was his first officer, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. They had served together for 3 years, and Morrison had learned to trust her judgment completely. "The Croth Dominion," she said quietly. "I've read about them. They're raiders and slavers. They stay just outside Council space, hitting targets the Council considers too remote or unimportant to defend." Morrison nodded. He had read the same reports. The Croth were one of the ugly realities of galactic civilization. Everyone knew they existed, everyone condemned them, but no one did anything about them because it was easier to look away. "Where's Vareth Prime?" Morrison asked. Palmer worked his console. "Checking the star charts now. It's in the outer rim, about 4 days away at maximum speed. The system is marked as inhabited but low priority. Population 2 billion, all civilian. No military presence, no strategic value." "Strategic value," Morrison repeated. The words tasted bitter. 2 billion people crying for help, and the galaxy calculated their worth in strategic value. Hayes leaned closer. "Jake, I know what you're thinking, but this isn't our fight. We're one ship on routine patrol. We can forward the message to Earth Command and let them decide what to do." Morrison looked at her. "You really think Earth Command will send help?" Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Probably not. Earth is still new to galactic politics. Getting involved in a conflict with the Croth could create diplomatic problems. Command will likely file a protest with the Council and call it a day." "So we do nothing?" Morrison asked. "We hear people begging for help and we just fly away?" "I didn't say that," Hayes replied. "I just want to make sure you understand what you're considering. If we go to Vareth Prime, we're picking a fight with a force that probably outnumbers us significantly. We could get the whole crew killed for people we've never met." Morrison stood and walked to the main view screen. Stars streaked past as the ship moved through space at faster than light speeds. Somewhere out there, people were suffering. Children were watching their parents enslaved. Families were being torn apart. A whole civilization was dying while the galaxy watched and did nothing. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 10 years old now, living with her mother in the rebuilt city of Seattle. He thought about the world he wanted her to grow up in. Did he want her to live in a galaxy where people ignored cries for help because it was inconvenient? Where they calculated the value of lives based on strategic importance? Morrison turned to face his crew, Palmer at communications, Hayes at his side, Chief Engineer Danny Reed, who had just climbed up from the engine room to see what the commotion was about, Lieutenant Karen White at tactical, Ensign Paul Grant at navigation, 12 more crew members scattered throughout the ship, all of them looking at him, waiting for his decision. "I joined the military because I thought I could make a difference," Morrison said. "I thought I could help people who couldn't help themselves. That's what humanity is supposed to be about, isn't it? We spent centuries fighting each other, learning hard lessons about what happens when good people stand by and do nothing. We swore we would be better." He paused, making eye contact with each crew member. "I can't order you to follow me on this. It's dangerous and it's probably stupid. If anyone wants to object, speak now. I'll note your objection in the log and there will be no consequences." No one spoke. Palmer sat up straighter in his chair. Reed crossed his arms but nodded. Hayes smiled slightly. "All right then," Morrison said. "Grant, set course for Vareth Prime, maximum speed. Palmer, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we're doing and that we'll likely need backup. Hayes, start working on tactical options. I want to know what we're walking into." The bridge burst into activity. Grant's fingers flew across his console, plotting the course. Palmer composed the message to Earth. Hayes pulled up everything the ship's database had on Croth vessels and tactics. Morrison returned to his command chair. His heart was pounding. He knew this might be the worst decision of his career. He might be leading his crew to their deaths. But he also knew he could not live with himself if he turned away. Danny Reed appeared at his elbow. The chief engineer was a gruff man in his 50s, with grease permanently stained into his hands. "You know the engines aren't designed for sustained maximum speed, right? I can give you 4 days, but we'll need at least 2 days of maintenance after that." "Will we make it to Vareth Prime?" Morrison asked. "Yeah, we'll make it. Getting back might be another story." Reed grinned. "Good thing I like a challenge." Hayes finished her preliminary analysis. "Captain, I'm showing 17 Croth vessels in the Verath system, including a Dreadnought-class command ship. We are significantly outgunned. Recommendations? Morrison asked. Hit-and-run tactics. Strike fast, strike hard, and don't give them time to coordinate a response. We target their supply lines first. Ships need fuel and ammunition. We deny them that, we level the playing field. Morrison nodded. It was a good plan, as good as any they would come up with. It might even work. But success or failure did not really matter. What mattered was that they were going. That they heard someone cry for help and they answered. The ship jumped to maximum speed. 4 days to Verath Prime. 4 days to prepare for a fight they had no business taking. 4 days to figure out how a single human frigate could stand against a fleet. But they would figure it out, because that was what humans did. They found impossible problems and they solved them anyway. They heard people in trouble and they showed up, even when no one else would. Ambassador Kelrin's message continued to broadcast into the void, not knowing that it had already been answered. The Deathworlders of Earth were coming. The valiant heart dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Verath system. The transition always made Morrison's stomach flip, a side effect of the physics involved that no amount of technology could completely eliminate. He gripped his armrest and waited for the disorientation to pass. "Report," he said once his vision cleared. Lieutenant Chris Palmer worked his sensors quickly. Multiple contacts. 17 ships as expected, all Croth configuration. The Dreadnought is in high orbit over Verath Prime. Smaller vessels are scattered throughout the system. He paused. "Captain, I'm also picking up debris, lots of it. Looks like destroyed defense stations and civilian vessels." Morrison felt anger rise in his chest. The Ilithari had tried to defend themselves. Their ships and stations had been swept aside like toys. On the main screen, Verath Prime appeared as a blue-green marble, beautiful from a distance. But as Palmer increased magnification, the scars became visible. Dark patches spread across the oceans where pollution had killed the water. Smoke rose from burning settlements. Industrial platforms dotted the surface like infections. Commander Lisa Hayes stood beside his chair, studying her tactical display. "The Croth are getting comfortable. Their patrol patterns are lazy. They're not expecting trouble." "Why would they?" Lieutenant Karen White said from Tactical. "The Council abandoned these people. The Croth probably think no one else is stupid enough to interfere." "Then let's be stupid," Morrison said. "Grant, take us into the shadow of that moon. Keep us hidden from their sensors." "Reed, how are the engines?" Danny Reed's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering. "Hot, but holding. We can give you full power when you need it, but I wouldn't want to do this trip again anytime soon." Morrison studied the tactical display. 17 ships. His single frigate carried 2 railguns, 4 missile tubes, and a point defense system designed to shoot down incoming fire. In a straight fight, they would last maybe 10 minutes. But Hayes was right about one thing. The Croth were not expecting trouble, which meant they were vulnerable. "Here's what we're going to do," Morrison said. "We're going to hit their supply depot on the 3rd moon. Palmer, you said they're using it as a fuel and ammunition stockpile for the whole fleet?" "Yes, sir. It's a large facility. Destroying it would cripple their operations." Hayes nodded slowly. "Hit their logistics." "Without fuel and ammunition, those ships are just expensive decorations. But Captain, that depot is probably shielded, and even if we destroy it, the explosion will announce our presence to the whole fleet." "I know," Morrison said. "That's the point. We're one ship. We can't win a straight fight. But we can make them angry. Make them chase us. Spread them out, and then we hurt them as much as we can before backup arrives." "You think backup is coming?" White asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "Palmer sent our message 4 days ago. If I know Earth Command, they're already assembling a fleet. We just need to survive until they get here." He did not mention that backup might not arrive in time, or that Earth Command might decide the risk was too great and leave them here alone. His crew knew the risks. They had come anyway. "Grant, plot an attack approach. I want a firing solution that puts us in and out fast. Palmer, send a narrow beam transmission to the surface. Tell the Ilithari that help has arrived. Tell them to take shelter and prepare for fighting overhead." "Yes, sir," Palmer said, his fingers dancing across his console. A moment later, he looked up. "Message sent. Captain, I'm also detecting a faint response from the surface. The Ilithari are asking who we are." "Tell them we're from Earth," Morrison said. "Tell them we heard their message." The valiant heart moved through the darkness, engines running silent, hidden in the shadow of the moon. Grant plotted the approach carefully, using the moon's gravity to mask their trajectory. They would get one shot at this, one chance to hurt the Croth before the real fight began. Morrison watched the distance to target count down on his screen. 500 kilometers, 400, 300. His heart hammered in his chest. This was it, the point where they committed to the fight. After this, there was no going back. All hands, battle stations, he announced over the ship-wide intercom. This is not a drill. We are engaging a hostile fleet to defend the Ilithari people of Verath Prime. Make your ancestors proud. Red alert lights bathed the bridge in crimson. The ship's artificial gravity increased slightly, preparing for combat maneuvers. Morrison heard the clunk of ammunition being loaded into the railguns. Missile tubes primed. Shields powered up to maximum. Target locked, White said calmly. Railgun 1 ready to fire. Fire, Morrison ordered. The ship shuddered as the railgun sent a projectile down range at a significant fraction of light speed. The round was just a dense metal slug, no explosives or warhead. It did not need one. At the speeds involved, kinetic energy was enough. The projectile crossed the distance in less than a second. It punched through the depot's shields like they were tissue paper, through the outer hull and struck the fuel storage tanks inside. The explosion was immediate and massive. Fuel and ammunition detonated in a chain reaction. The fireball expanded outward, consuming the depot and 3 Croth ships that had been docked there. The blast was so bright that Morrison had to look away from the main screen. Direct hit, Palmer reported. The depot is gone. Multiple secondary explosions. 3 Croth vessels destroyed. Grant, get us out of here. Maximum speed, Morrison ordered. The valiant heart surged forward, accelerating at rates that pushed the crew back into their seats. This was where humanity's evolution on a high-gravity world gave them an advantage. Most galactic species could not handle this kind of acceleration. Human crews trained for it regularly. Alarm klaxons wailed on the bridge. The Croth fleet is responding, Hayes reported. All ships are moving to intercept. They're launching fighters. Of course they are, Morrison muttered. White, give me point defense. Shoot down anything that gets close. Grant, evasive maneuvers. Don't make it easy for them. The ship twisted and turned through space, dodging incoming fire. Croth fighters swarmed after them, firing plasma bolts that lit up the darkness. The Valiant Heart's point defense system came alive, tracking and destroying targets with machine precision. Fighter after fighter exploded as the defensive lasers found their marks. But there were too many. A plasma bolt got through, slamming into their rear shields. The ship shook violently. Lights flickered on the bridge. Rear shields down to 60%, White reported. Forward shields holding. Morrison gritted his teeth. They needed to lose some of these fighters before the pursuit overwhelmed them. White, launch missiles. Full spread. Target the fighters. 4 missiles streaked away from the Valiant Heart, each one tracking a different fighter. The missiles were fast and smart, capable of making decisions on their own. 3 found their targets and detonated. The 4th was shot down by enemy point defense. We're clear of the fighter screen, Hayes said. But 2 Croth destroyers are moving to cut us off. Morrison studied the tactical display. The destroyers were trying to box them in, using their superior numbers to trap the Valiant Heart between them. Classic tactic, but it only worked if your opponent was afraid to fight. Grant, bring us about. Head straight for the nearest destroyer. Sir? Grant hesitated. You heard me. Take us right at them. Grant obeyed, though Morrison could see the tension in his shoulders. The Valiant Heart turned and accelerated directly toward the nearest Croth destroyer. It was 3 times their size, bristling with weapons. They think we're crazy, Hayes said quietly. Let them think that, Morrison replied. White, target their engines. Railgun full power. The distance closed rapidly. The Croth destroyer opened fire, plasma bolts and missiles filling the space between them. The Valiant Heart's shields flared as they absorbed the hits. Damage alarms rang through the ship. Shields down to 30%, White said. We can't take much more. Fire, Morrison ordered. Both railguns fired simultaneously. The metal slugs crossed the distance in heartbeats. The first struck the destroyer's shields and shattered them. The second punched through the exposed hull and into the engine core. The destroyer's engines exploded, sending the ship spinning out of control. Morrison did not wait to see if it would recover. Grant evasive maneuver Alpha 3. Get us out of their firing line. The Valiant Heart rolled and dove using 3-dimensional space in ways that confused sensors designed for more predictable opponents. More fire followed them, but Grant's flying kept them ahead of the worst of it. Status? Morrison asked. Shields at 15% and recharging. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 4, repair teams responding. Both railguns operational. 2 missiles remaining. White reported. Morrison checked the tactical display. They had destroyed 3 ships at the depot, damaged 1 destroyer, and shot down maybe a dozen fighters. Not bad for a single frigate that should not have stood a chance. But the Croth fleet was fully alert now and very, very angry. Morrison could see them reorganizing, forming up into attack patterns. They would not make the same mistakes twice. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth," Palmer said suddenly. "It's Admiral Kate Sullivan, 3rd Fleet." Morrison felt relief wash over him. "Put her through." Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. She was a hard-looking... Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the battleship Ironwill, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. 3 hours ago, she had been preparing for fleet exercises near Jupiter. Then Morrison's message arrived, and everything changed. Within 30 minutes, she had assembled every ship within range. 17 vessels. Not as many as she would have liked, but enough to make a statement. The timer reached 0. Space twisted and reality bent as the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Verith Prime appeared before them, along with the scattered remains of the Croth occupation force. Sullivan's tactical officer immediately began identifying targets. "Ma'am, I'm reading 14 Croth vessels still operational. The Valiant Heart is still in the fight, but barely. Shields are down and they're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches," Commander Alex Turner reported. He was a young man with steady hands and a gift for seeing patterns in chaos. Sullivan felt a surge of respect for Morrison and his crew. They had held out for 3 hours against impossible odds. Most captains would have cut and run after the first engagement. Morrison had stayed and fought, buying time for help to arrive. "Open a channel to the Croth commander," Sullivan ordered. "Let's see if they're smart enough to leave peacefully." A moment later, a face appeared on the main screen. The Croth were an unpleasant-looking species with rough gray skin covered in bony plates. Their eyes were small and dark, set deep in a skull that looked designed for ramming. This particular Croth wore what Sullivan assumed was a military uniform, decorated with symbols she did not recognize. "I am War Leader Thrax of the Croth Dominion," the alien said. His voice was harsh, translated by the ship's computer into English. "You are interfering in Dominion territory. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Sullivan smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Earth 3rd Fleet. This system is not Dominion territory. It belongs to the Ilithari people, who you have been enslaving and murdering. You have exactly 10 minutes to gather your ships and leave. After that, we will remove you by force." Thrax's face twisted into what might have been a sneer. "You bring 17 ships against the might of the Dominion? Your species is young and foolish. The Galactic Council was wise to refuse these people. You should have learned from their example." "The Council is afraid of you," Sullivan said. "We're not." 9 minutes. She cut the transmission before Thrax could respond. Turner looked at her with something like awe. "Ma'am, do you really think they'll leave?" "No," Sullivan said, "but I wanted to give them the chance. When this is over, I want it on record that we tried diplomacy first." She studied the tactical display. The Croth had 14 ships, including the massive dreadnought. Earth's fleet had 17 ships, but several were frigates and destroyers, lighter vessels built for speed and patrol work rather than heavy combat. On paper, the forces were roughly even, but Sullivan had advantages the Croth did not know about. Human ships were built tough. They had to be. Earth's near-space environment was harsh, full of radiation and debris. Human vessels were designed to take punishment and keep fighting. They also had weapons that most galactic species considered crude but effective. Railguns firing metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missiles with independent targeting. No fancy energy weapons or exotic physics. Just simple, brutal kinetic force. And then there was the human factor. Humans were deathworlders, evolved on a planet that tried to kill them daily. They could handle higher gravity, more acceleration, and more stress than most species. That meant human ships could pull maneuvers that would kill other crews. The 10 minutes passed. Thrax did not withdraw. "All ships, battle formation Omega," Sullivan ordered. "Target the dreadnought first. If we take out their command ship, the rest will fall apart." The Earth fleet moved forward in a tight formation, shields overlapping for maximum protection. The Croth fleet spread out, trying to surround them. Classic tactic, but Sullivan had expected it. "Sir, the Croth are launching fighters," Turner reported. "Count is over 200 small craft." Sullivan nodded. Fighter screens were standard in galactic warfare. Cheap, fast, and effective at overwhelming point defense systems. But Earth's fleet had been drilling for this exact scenario. "All ships activate Defensive Protocol 7. Focus fire on fighter clusters. Don't let them swarm us." The battle began with a wall of light. Lasers, plasma bolts, and missiles filled the space between the two fleets. The iron will shook as enemy fire hammered against its shields. All around the bridge, damage reports started coming in. Forward shields at 80%. A fighter squadron had broken through and damaged the destroyer Ranger. The frigate Swift was taking heavy fire from a Croth cruiser, but Earth's fleet was hitting back just as hard. Sullivan watched as the battleship Hammer fired its main railgun. The projectile crossed the distance faster than sensors could track and slammed into a Croth destroyer. The ship's shields collapsed. The hull crumpled. Atmosphere vented into space as the destroyer broke apart. "One target destroyed," Turner reported. "Hammer is reloading." Sullivan allowed herself a brief smile. "Continue firing. Target the dreadnought's shields. I want them down." 4 Earth ships focused their fire on the massive Croth command vessel. Railgun rounds and missiles hammered against its shields, slowly draining them. The dreadnought fought back, its weapons tearing into the Earth cruiser Liberty. Sullivan watched as the Liberty's shields failed and hull plating began to melt under plasma fire. "Liberty is breaking off, ma'am." "Heavy damage," Turner said. "Tell them to fall back to the secondary line. Ranger, move up and fill the gap." The battle became a brutal slugging match. Ships on both sides traded fire at close range. Fighters darted between the larger vessels looking for weak points to exploit. The space around Vareth Prime lit up with explosions and weapons fire. But slowly the tide began to turn. The human ships were tougher than the Croth expected. Railgun rounds punched through shields that should have stopped them. Human point defense systems shot down fighters with frightening accuracy. And when Croth ships tried to use superior numbers to surround individual Earth vessels, those ships simply accelerated away at speeds the Croth could not match. "Ma'am, the dreadnought's shields are down to 30%, Turner reported. "If we maintain fire, we can break through." Sullivan was about to order a final push when her communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, I'm picking up a transmission from Croth Space. Multiple ships are entering the system." Sullivan's heart sank. Reinforcements. If the Croth had called in more ships, this battle could turn very badly. "How many?" Ma'am, I'm not sure. The sensors are having trouble getting an accurate count. At least 20 ships, maybe more." Sullivan cursed under her breath. 20 ships would tip the balance completely. She had fought the good fight, but she could not sacrifice her entire fleet on a battle they could not win. "Prepare to fall back. We'll cover the Valiant Heart's retreat and try to get as many Eleutheri evacuated as possible." "Wait," Turner said, his voice filled with confusion. "Ma'am, those aren't Croth ships. The computer is identifying them as Vryn, Tellurian, and Hexari designs. It's the Galactic Council races." Sullivan stared at the tactical display as new contacts appeared. 23 ships, all bearing the markings of Council member species. For a moment, she did not understand. Then Turner provided the explanation. "Ma'am, I'm receiving a transmission from the lead Vryn ship. They're saying they heard about our engagement and came to help. Apparently, word of what happened spread through the Council. Not all the members are happy about their leadership's decision to abandon the Eleuthari." Sullivan felt something warm bloom in her chest. The Council had officially refused to help, but individual members had come anyway. Not because their governments ordered it, but because ship captains and fleet commanders had made the same choice Morrison did. They heard people crying for help and they came. "Open a channel to the Vryn commander," Sullivan ordered. "Welcome them to the party and coordinate our attack on the dreadnought." The combined fleet hit the Croth dreadnought with everything they had. Vryn energy weapons, Tellurian missiles, Hexari particle beams, and human railguns all converged on the massive ship. Its shields collapsed entirely. Hull plating vaporized. Internal explosions rippled through the vessel. War Leader Thrax appeared on the screen one last time, his face a mask of rage and fear. "This is not over, human. The Dominion will remember this." "Good," Sullivan said. "Make sure they remember this part too. Earth protects those who cannot protect themselves. Come at us or our friends again, and we'll finish what we started here." The transmission cut as the dreadnought's power failed. The massive ship went dark, drifting dead in space. Around it, the remaining Croth vessels were breaking formation, some trying to flee, others attempting to surrender. All ships, cease fire on vessels attempting to surrender, Sullivan ordered. But if any of them try to run, shoot them down. I want every Croth commander to take the same message back to their leadership. This ends now. Over the next hour, Sullivan's fleet accepted the surrender of 6 Croth vessels. The rest either fled the system or were destroyed. The battle was over. Varath Prime was free. Sullivan contacted Morrison on the Valiant Heart. The captain looked. 3 months after the battle, Ambassador Kelrin stood on the shore of his homeworld and watched the sun rise over clean waters. The oceans had been purified, the Croth mining platforms dismantled and removed. The scars would take years to fully heal, but the poison was gone. His people were free. Beside him stood Captain Jake Morrison, his arm still in a medical support brace from injuries sustained during the battle. The captain had insisted on returning to Varath Prime for the memorial ceremony, despite his doctor's protests. Kelrin was grateful for his presence. We planted 2 million coral seeds yesterday, Kelrin said quietly, in memory of those we lost. Each seed will grow into a new reef, a new home for our ocean life. It is our way of honoring the dead while building hope for the future. Morrison nodded. That's beautiful. On Earth we plant trees. Different worlds, same idea. Life continues. Kelrin turned to look at the human. Over the past months, he had learned much about Morrison's species. They came from a brutal world where everything tried to kill them. Their evolution had been shaped by predators, disease, natural disasters, and their own violent tendencies. By all logic, they should have been conquerors and killers, taking what they wanted by force. Instead, they had come to help people they had never met. They had risked everything for strangers. Kelrin still did not fully understand why. Captain Morrison, may I ask you something? Kelrin said. Your people are warriors. I have seen your weapons, your ships, your soldiers. You could easily take what you want from weaker species. Why do you choose to protect us instead? Morrison was quiet for a long moment, watching the waves roll against the shore. My species spent thousands of years fighting each other, he finally said. Wars over territory, resources, religion, pride. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, climate collapse. We came so close to extinction that it terrified us. He paused, his expression distant. Eventually we learned. We realized that our strength should not be used to dominate the weak, but to protect them. That real power comes from choosing not to hurt people when you could easily do so. We made mistakes. God knows we made terrible mistakes. But we learned from them. Kelrin felt tears forming in his large eyes. The Galactic Council has protocols and procedures for everything. But they have forgotten why those rules exist. They have forgotten that the purpose of civilization is to protect people, not to maintain comfortable systems. They'll remember, Morrison said. What happened here changed things. The Council can't ignore it anymore. He was right. The Battle of Varath Prime had sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. Individual ship captains from Council races had defied their governments to help. The story had spread across hundreds of worlds. People were asking uncomfortable questions about their leaders' decisions. The Galactic Council had called for an emergency session to discuss Earth's actions. Kelrin had been invited to testify, along with representatives from the Vryn, Tellurian, and Hexari crews who had joined the fight. The session was scheduled to begin in 2 days. A human shuttle descended from the sky, its engines kicking up sand and spray as it landed on the beach. The hatch opened and Admiral Kate Sullivan stepped out, followed by several members of her staff. She wore her formal uniform, dark blue with silver decorations indicating her rank in service. Captain Morrison, Ambassador Kelrin. Sullivan greeted them. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Admiral, Kelrin said. We were just discussing the memorial ceremony. Will you be attending? I wouldn't miss it, Sullivan replied. My fleet has been helping with reconstruction efforts, but this is more important. Honoring those who were lost reminds us why we fight. She turned to Morrison. Captain, I wanted to inform you personally. Earth Command has decided to permanently station a defense force in this system. 3 ships will remain here until the Illithari can rebuild their own defense capabilities. I volunteered the Iron Will to be one of them. Morrison smiled. The Illithari will be grateful for the protection, Admiral, though I suspect your presence is as much about sending a message to the Croth as protecting Varath Prime. You're not wrong, Sullivan admitted. The Croth need to understand that raiding defenseless worlds is no longer a safe business. Every system they attack might have Earthships waiting. That uncertainty will make them think twice. Kelrin felt a surge of gratitude. Admiral, you cannot know what your presence means to my people. For the first time in our history, we do not feel alone in the universe. Sullivan's expression softened. You're not alone, Ambassador. Not anymore. 2 days later, Kelrin stood in the Galactic Council chamber once again, but this time the atmosphere was different. The representatives who had once listened to his plea with polite indifference now watched him with uncomfortable attention. Behind him, Admiral Sullivan and Ambassador Helen Grant of Earth waited to speak. Several rows over, he could see the Vryn, Tellurian, and Hexari captains who had defied their governments to help. The Council's primary speaker, Crystalex, floated at the center of the chamber. Its crystalline body dimmed and brightened as it spoke. Ambassador Kelrin, you have returned to this council. The last time you stood here, we failed you. We failed your people. There are no words sufficient to apologize for that failure. Kelrin was surprised. He had expected defensiveness, not apology. Primary speaker, I did not come here seeking apology. I came to bear witness to what happened after you refused to help. He activated the holographic display. Images appeared above the chamber. The battle for Verath Prime, the valiant heart fighting alone against impossible odds, Earth's Third Fleet arriving with guns blazing, ships from council races joining the fight despite their government's official positions, the final surrender of the Kroth forces. When this council refused to help, I thought my people were doomed, Kelrin said. I sent one final message into the void, not expecting an answer. But humanity heard me. Captain Morrison and his crew came, knowing they might die because they believed it was the right thing to do. He paused, letting the images speak for themselves. The chamber was completely silent. Humanity is a young species. They have been part of galactic civilization for only 5 years. But in that time, they have shown us what we have forgotten. That strength without compassion is tyranny. That rules without justice are meaningless. That sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks that comfortable bureaucrats will not accept. Crystalex dimmed its light, a sign of shame among its people. You speak truth, Ambassador. This council prioritized stability over justice, politics over principle. We told ourselves we were being pragmatic when we were simply being cowardly. A Tellurian representative stood, its feathers ruffled in agitation. The humans showed us the error of our ways. Individual crews from my government chose to follow Earth's example, and I am proud of them. But we should not have needed that example. We should have acted when you first asked. More representatives stood, each acknowledging their failure. Kelrin watched with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. These apologies were sincere, but they came too late for the 2 million Ilithari who had died before help arrived. Admiral Sullivan was given permission to address the council. She stood at the central platform, her posture military straight, her voice clear and strong. Honored council members, Earth does not seek to lecture you. We have made our own mistakes, committed our own sins, but we learned from them. We learned that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. That freedom means nothing if people are enslaved. That peace without justice is just another word for oppression. She swept her gaze across the chamber. Earth will continue to respond to distress calls, regardless of whether the council approves. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. If that makes us troublemakers in your eyes, so be it. We would rather be troublemakers who save lives than respectful members who let people die. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in agreement. The council was clearly divided on how to respond to Earth's challenge. Then something unexpected happened. A young Vryn representative floated forward, one Kelrin had not heard speak before. Primary speaker, I propose a formal change to council protocols. Any member species should have the right to respond militarily to verified distress calls, even without full council approval. We should encourage protection of the helpless, not discourage it with bureaucratic delays. The proposal sparked immediate debate. Some representatives supported it enthusiastically, others worried about the precedent it would set. The argument continued for hours, but Kelrin could see that something fundamental had shifted. The council was being forced to confront its own failures and consider reforms. After the session ended, Kelrin found Morrison and Sullivan outside the chamber. The captain looked tired but satisfied. How do you think it went? Morrison asked. Better than I hoped, Kelrin admitted. They are talking about real changes, not just empty apologies. Whether those changes actually happen remains to be seen, but at least they are willing to discuss them. Sullivan nodded. Change is slow, especially in large organizations, but we proved that individual action still matters, that one ship, one captain, one crew can make a difference. Kelrin thought about Morrison and his crew, about Sullivan's fleet, about